What most men learn too late about compound interest is that money does not grow because you want freedom. It grows because time is attached to discipline. You think earning more is the answer. But income only gives you another month of survival if nothing is retained, invested, and allowed to multiply. Compound interest is the simple law where your money earns money, and then that earned money begins earning too. At first, it looks weak. $1,000 at 10% becomes $1,100, then $1,210. Nothing dramatic. That is why impatient men quit before the curve begins to reveal them. But time is not neutral. It multiplies whatever you repeatedly do. Savings compound. Debt compounds. Discipline compounds. Neglect compounds. The mistake is not starting small. The mistake is staying blind, while the same law either builds your escape or tightens your cage. You just saw the machine in its smallest form. 1,000 becomes 1,100. Then 1,100 becomes 1,210. Most men look at that and feel nothing because the number does not flatter them. It does not buy status. It does not silence doubters. It does not make the room treat them differently tomorrow morning. That is the trap. Compound interest is not difficult to understand. It is difficult to respect early enough. The law is simple, but the ego rejects it because the first rewards are small, quiet, and private. And the unsupported man often wants visible proof quickly because he has spent years being doubted, ignored, misunderstood, or treated like his ambition is just noise. He wants the world to see evidence. He wants his family to stop questioning him. He wants his friends to realize he was not delusional. He wants society to stop handling him like replaceable labor. But compound interest does not care about your need to be seen. It only asks one question. Can you leave capital alone long enough for time to turn discipline into force? That is why the same man can work hard for 10 years and still have nothing powerful to show for it. The answer is not always laziness. Many men are not lazy. They work, they sacrifice, they carry pressure. They keep going when nobody claps. But effort without structure leaks. Income without retention disappears. Ambition without calculation becomes emotion with expensive language. Machiavelli understood the difference between desire and power. In The Prince, he wrote that men judge more by what they see than by what they touch. In modern language, the world does not respect your internal effort. It respects visible proof. Money is one of the clearest forms of proof, not because money makes a man superior, but because money gives him options. And options change how a man is treated. A broke man can have intelligence, ambition, discipline, and vision. But if he has no savings, no assets, no cushion, no leverage, and no margin, the world still handles him like someone who must accept whatever is offered. He cannot leave as easily. He cannot negotiate as strongly. He cannot take risk with calm. He cannot absorb an emergency without panic. And a man with no margin is easier to pressure. So this is not just about what compound interest means. This is about why some men stay trapped in survival while others quietly build escape velocity. To understand that, you need 7 laws. Law 1. Money does not grow. Because you want freedom. Wanting freedom means nothing. Every trapped man wants freedom. The employee who hates his boss wants freedom. The man with credit card debt wants freedom. The ambitious son whose family doubts him wants freedom. The man who feels behind his peers wants freedom. The man who is tired of explaining himself wants freedom. The man who has been strong for everyone else but weak with his own money wants freedom. But freedom does not respond to desire. Freedom responds to retained power. If you earn $3,000 and spend $3,000, your income did not build you. It only passed through you. You were not the owner of that money. You were the corridor. Money entered your life, paid everyone else, and left you with the emotional illusion that you were working because you were moving. That is not power, that is circulation. A higher salary can make a weak system look stronger for a few months. It can give you better dinners, better clothes, better distractions, and a more expensive version of the same prison. But if your behavior rises with your income, you are not becoming free. You are only upgrading the cage. This is the first brutal law. Money cannot compound if it never stays with you long enough to be commanded. You cannot invest money you already surrendered. You cannot multiply money that never survives the month. You cannot build leverage with income that exists only to maintain appearances. And this is where many men lie to themselves. They say they need more money before they become disciplined. But more money does not fix a structure that is built to leak. It only gives the leak more volume. The first act of financial power is not investing. It is retention. Retention means some part of your effort remains under your command after the world has taken its share. Rent may take some, food may take some, bills may take some, taxes may take some. But if nothing remains, then the world owns the output of your labor before your future ever touches it. And the unsupported man cannot afford that. A man with inherited money can make mistakes and get rescued. A man with a powerful network can stumble and still receive another opportunity. A man with family backing can experiment with less fear. But if you are building with no backup, every dollar that survives your impulses becomes a soldier. Every retained dollar is one more unit of future optionality. Every invested dollar is one small refusal to remain dependent. This is why income without retention becomes survival, not power. But once money stays, what exactly happens to it? This is where most men either wake up or remain financially childish. Law 2. Compound interest. Is interest earning interest? Compound interest means your money earns money, and then that earned money also begins earning. Simple, no fake complexity. If you invest $1,000 at 10%, after 1 year you have $1,100. The first $100 is interest. In the second year you are no longer earning 10% only on the original $1,000. You are earning on $1,100. That becomes $1,210. The extra $10 may look small, but that small difference is the seed of the entire machine. Because the machine is no longer only using your original money, it has started using its own output. That is the hidden mechanism. Compound interest turns past discipline into future force. Most men miss this because they are trained to think money grows only when they personally work. They think more hours, more shifts, more clients, more overtime, more pressure. There is nothing wrong with work. Work is necessary. But if work is the only way your money grows, then your body remains the engine. And an engine that must always be present is not free. Compound interest introduces a different reality. Your past decisions begin working beside you. The money you did not spend last year starts participating in this year. The interest you earned becomes part of the base. The base becomes larger. The larger base produces larger interest. The next year starts from a stronger position. And if you do not interrupt it, the machine begins to separate you from the man who keeps restarting. This is why the first 1,000 matters more than the ego admits. Not because 1,000 makes you rich, it does not. But because 1,000 that survives and compounds proves that you are no longer just consuming your labor. You are converting labor into structure. That is the difference between a man who earns and a man who builds. A man who only earns must keep proving himself every month. A man who builds creates something that remembers his discipline after the month ends. Most compound interest calculators show you a dream number. Serious men need a reality number. Use the free calculator in the description and look at contributions, growth, inflation, taxes, fees, and the cost of waiting. Do not use it to fantasize. Use it to confront whether your current behavior is building freedom or financing delay. Now look at Warren Buffett. Buffett was not made by one dramatic trade. He bought his first stock at 11. He studied businesses. He waited. He retained capital. He reinvested. He stayed in the game while other men chased excitement. That is the part immature men do not want to hear. They want the exciting move. They want the sudden breakthrough. They want the story where one decision turns them into someone undeniable. But Buffett's real accusation is patience with structure. The pressure was not one day. The pressure was decades. Decades of ignoring impatience. Decades of letting capital stay productive. Decades of understanding that the curve rewards the man who survives boredom. Berkshire Hathaway's long-term record is not a motivational poster. It is a mathematical accusation against impatience. Over decades, a small difference in annual return becomes a massive difference in final power. The difference does not look impressive in year 1. It does not look dramatic in year 2. But time magnifies small advantages until the final result looks almost unfair. That is what weak financial instincts fail to understand. They look at year 1 and say, that is nothing. They look at year 2 and say, still nothing. Then they quit before the curve begins doing what only the curve can do. They interrupt the machine because it does not satisfy their need for visible status. They sell too early, spend too early, stop contributing too early, start over too often, chase speed instead of continuity, and then they call compound interest slow, when the real problem is that they have never allowed anything in their life to remain disciplined long enough to become powerful. This is not only a financial flaw, it is an identity flaw. If you cannot tolerate small beginnings, you will keep destroying the foundations of large outcomes. This is why the private system matters. The real problem for most men is not lack of information. It is lack of structure, lack of proof, lack of positioning, and lack of self-command when nobody is watching. Inside Patreon, I break down the deeper private frameworks for discipline, leverage, money, proof, positioning, funnels, and the systems that turn isolated effort into visible power. It is not for men who want entertainment or comfort. It is for men who are done confusing potential with evidence. The decision is yours. Law 3. The first years look weak. $1,000 at 10%. After 1 year, $1,100. After 2 years, $1,210. After 10 years, about $2,594. Now be honest. The first number does not impress you. That is the trap. Men love visible status. A new watch, a better car, a weekend flex, a purchase that tells the world, look, I am becoming someone. Something immediate, something other people can notice, something that briefly closes the wound of being underestimated. But compound interest begins invisibly. It starts beneath public attention. It works in silence. It does not announce itself. It does not defend your ego in conversations. It does not make your doubters apologize next week. It does not make your friends respect you immediately. It does not give your family the proof they demand before they believe in you. And because insecure men need proof too early, they sabotage the proof that would have arrived later. This is where Machiavelli becomes useful again. He wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved when one must choose. Applied to money, this does not mean becoming cruel. It means your system must become feared by your impulses. Your emotions should not feel free to raid your future. Your boredom should not feel free to interrupt your plan. Your insecurity should not feel free to buy status with money that should have become leverage. Your loneliness should not feel free to purchase distractions that keep you dependent. Your need to be seen should not feel free to spend the evidence that would have made you undeniable. A man who cannot command himself cannot command capital. The early years of compound interest are not weak. They are the loyalty test. They reveal whether you are building for freedom or performing for attention. They expose whether you can protect a future no one else can see yet. They show whether you are serious enough to let small numbers live. Because that is the strange humiliation of compounding. At the beginning, the system looks beneath you. It feels too small for the size of your ambition. You imagine the future version of yourself as powerful, independent, respected, difficult to ignore. Then you look at the first $100 of interest and feel insulted. You think, this cannot be the path. This is too slow. This is too ordinary. This is not enough to change my life. And that reaction is exactly why most men never build anything that lasts. They want the result to respect their imagined identity before their behavior has earned it. But the curve does not care who you imagine yourself to be. It only responds to what you repeatedly protect. Law 4. Linear men. Misjudge exponential systems. A paycheck is linear. You work, you get paid, you spend. The month resets. Work again, get paid again, spend again, reset again. That is linear life. It creates motion without accumulation. And motion can deceive a man because it feels like progress. He is tired, so he believes he is building. He is busy, so he believes he is advancing. He has stress, pressure, messages, shifts, bills, responsibilities, and fatigue, so he tells himself he must be moving forward. But a man can be exhausted and still be circling the same cage. That is the danger of linear life. Every month starts over because nothing from last month is strong enough to defend this month. The paycheck arrives, the bills arrive, the impulses arrive, the old habits arrive. And by the time the month ends, the man is standing in the same place, waiting for the next payment to keep the structure alive. A paycheck dies monthly. An asset carries memory. That is the difference. Compound thinking stacks. This month adds to last month. This year strengthens next year. Your old discipline becomes the foundation for new growth. The point is not that money magically makes life easy. The point is that money, when retained and deployed properly, stops being only a reward for labor and becomes a structure that remembers labor. Linear men ask, how much can I make this month? Compounding men ask, what can I build this month that still works next year? That question separates survival from strategy. This applies to money first because money gives the cleanest proof. The numbers cannot flatter you. They cannot praise your intentions. They cannot pretend your discipline is stronger than it is. If the money is retained, invested, and allowed to multiply, the number changes. If it is spent, consumed, borrowed against, or interrupted, the number exposes you. But the same principle appears everywhere. One book does not change your judgment. 50 books applied over 5 years can change how you see markets, people, risk, incentives, and opportunity. One workout does not change your body. Years of training change how rooms read you before you speak. One saved dollar does not change your life. Thousands of retained dollars, invested and left alone, begin to change your options. But listen carefully. The lesson is not that everything compounds automatically. That is a childish version of the idea. The real lesson is that repeated behavior creates direction, and time magnifies direction. If the direction is strong, time becomes an ally. If the direction is weak, time becomes evidence against you. This is why a man must be careful what he repeats. A repeated expense becomes a lifestyle. A repeated distraction becomes an identity. A repeated excuse becomes a personality. A repeated investment becomes a base. A repeated skill becomes leverage. A repeated act of self-command becomes self-trust. Most men do not ruin their lives in one dramatic failure. They ruin their lives through repeated permissions. Permission to skip 1 month. Permission to spend because they are tired. Permission to delay because they are young. Permission to carry debt because everyone else does. Permission to avoid calculation because the number might embarrass them. Permission to stay vague because vague hope feels better than specific truth. Then years pass, and the man is shocked that nothing powerful has appeared. But nothing powerful appears from a pattern that never had power inside it. Machiavelli warned that introducing a new order of things is difficult. That is exactly what you are doing when you stop living like a consumer and start living like a builder. You are introducing a new order inside your own life, and the old order will resist. Your impulses will resist. Your friends may mock it. Your family may not understand it. Your own ego will say, "This is too slow." But the slowness is the price of ownership. A man who builds linearly remains dependent on constant effort. A man who builds exponentially creates systems that keep moving when his mood changes. This does not mean he stops working. It means his work finally leaves residue. It leaves assets. It leaves knowledge. It leaves proof. It leaves margin. It leaves a structure that tomorrow can stand on. That is what most people misunderstand about freedom. Freedom is not the absence of work. Freedom is the presence of accumulated options. Options come from accumulation. Accumulation comes from retention. Retention comes from discipline. Discipline survives only when a man stops treating every impulse like an emergency. So the question is not only, do you understand compound interest? The deeper question is, do you live in a way that allows anything to compound? Law 5, time is not neutral. Time is not your friend by default. Time is an amplifier. If you save and invest, time can amplify capital. If you learn and execute, time can amplify skill. If you train, time can amplify strength. If you document your work, time can amplify reputation. If you build trust with the right people, time can amplify opportunity. But if you avoid, time amplifies weakness. If you carry debt, time amplifies the cost. If you distract yourself every night, time amplifies regret. If you keep waiting for permission, time turns hesitation into identity. This is why unsupported men cannot afford casual delay. A man with inherited money can make mistakes and get rescued. A man with a powerful network can stumble and receive another opportunity. A man with a stable family cushion can take longer to learn the same lesson. But if you are building with no backup, every year matters more. You cannot waste time and then complain that the world is unfair. The world is unfair. That is why you need the machine, not a fantasy, not motivational noise, not the illusion that because you suffer, life owes you a reversal. The machine means a system that converts repeated discipline into increasing power. Money retained, money invested, debt reduced, skills accumulated, proof documented, attention protected, decisions calculated. Without that machine, time will still pass, but it will pass through you instead of building under you. Look at Jeff Bezos and Amazon. In 1997, Amazon was still a young company. It faced aggressive competition, execution risk, and pressure to prove itself. Bezos did not build Amazon by trying to look profitable every quarter. He told shareholders the company would prioritize long-term market leadership over short-term reactions. That matters. Because most people are controlled by short-term reaction. They want to look successful quickly. They want approval now. They want signs of immediate performance. They want visible proof before the system is mature enough to produce it. Amazon chose a different game. The pressure was clear. Wall Street wanted signs of immediate performance. Competitors were moving. The company had to survive skepticism. But the action was long-term reinvestment. Amazon reinvested into customers, infrastructure, selection, and scale. By the end of 1997, Amazon had served more than 1.5 million customers and reached $147.8 million in revenue. The lesson is not that you are Amazon. The lesson is that compounding is not only interest in an account, it is repeated reinvestment into a system that gets stronger with time. Customer trust compounds. Distribution compounds. Infrastructure compounds. Reputation compounds. Skill compounds. Attention compounds. Money compounds. Debt compounds. Neglect compounds. You are always compounding something. The only question is whether it will obey you or own you. This is where most men are exposed. They say they want freedom, but their repeated behaviors are building dependence. They say they want wealth, but their money disappears into status signals. They say they want respect, but they keep trading future leverage for present comfort. They say they want control, but they refuse to calculate. They say they want to become undeniable, but they keep interrupting the quiet systems that would eventually produce evidence. That is why time becomes dangerous. Time does not ask for your permission before it multiplies your pattern. If you are disciplined, time strengthens the discipline. If you are careless, time strengthens the consequences. If you are in debt, time can turn yesterday's weakness into tomorrow's restriction. If you are distracted, time can turn small avoidance into a decade of invisible regret. And this brings us to the enemy most men ignore. Compound interest does not care whether you are building wealth or building a cage. Law 6. Debt uses the same law against you. Most men love compound interest when it sounds like wealth. They stop listening when it sounds like debt. But the law has no morality. It does not care whether you feel good, feel ashamed, feel ambitious, or feel trapped. It does not care whether you had a hard childhood. It does not care whether nobody taught you money. It does not care whether your family doubted you or your friends ignored you. The law simply multiplies what is placed inside it. If interest is added to what you owe, and future interest is calculated on a growing balance, the machine is now working against you. This is why high-interest debt is not just a number. It is a predator wearing paperwork. You buy something to feel powerful for one moment. Then the bill arrives. Then the interest arrives. Then the minimum payment feels like responsibility. But underneath, the cage is tightening. And the most dangerous cage is the one that still lets you walk around. A man in debt can still look normal. He can still go to work. He can still post online. He can still buy coffee. He can still make jokes. He can still pretend everything is fine. But his future options are being quietly negotiated away by yesterday's decisions. A man in debt loses more than money. He loses optionality. He cannot leave as easily. He cannot negotiate as strongly. He cannot take risks with the same calm. He cannot absorb emergencies without panic. He cannot say no without calculating fear first. And a man with no margin is easier to pressure. This is the Machiavellian truth of debt. Dependency lowers status. Not because you are morally inferior, because you have fewer moves. Power belongs to the man with moves. Debt reduces moves. Compounding assets increase moves. That is the cold distinction. The man with compounding assets may not look impressive today, but he is quietly gaining moves. The man with compounding debt may look impressive today, but he is quietly losing moves. One man is buying future options. The other is renting present appearance with future weakness. This is why debt is so seductive to an insecure man. Debt can imitate status before status is earned. It can give him the car, the clothes, the trip, the device, the image, the temporary feeling that he has escaped his old identity. But if the purchase reduces his future moves, it was not power. It was performance. And performance purchased with dependency is one of the most expensive forms of weakness. The same law that can build your escape can build your cage. That should make you sober. Because compound interest is not magic, it is obedience multiplied by time. If you obey discipline, the curve eventually serves you. If you obey appetite, the curve eventually punishes you. If you obey avoidance, the curve makes the avoided thing stronger. If you obey calculation, the curve gives you a number to build around. This is where a man stops pretending he is confused. Confusion is often a disguise for fear. He is afraid to see the number. He is afraid to see how much he owes. He is afraid to see how much he wastes. He is afraid to see what 10 years of small discipline could become, because once he sees it, he can no longer call delay harmless. This is the deeper private work. The enemy is not only debt, low income, or lack of support. The enemy is the version of you that keeps choosing emotional relief over strategic command, then calls the consequences unfair. Inside Patreon, the deeper breakdowns are for men who want frameworks for proof, positioning, leverage, discipline, and self-command before time turns weakness into identity. It is not for men who want to be told they are already powerful. It is for men ready to build the evidence. The decision is yours. Law 7, calculation replaces hope. Hope is cheap. Every man hopes. Hope that he will earn more. Hope that life will stabilize. Hope that the right opportunity appears. Hope that someday he becomes disciplined. Hope that a future version of himself will rescue him from the consequences of the current version. But hope without calculation is just weakness with better language. You do not need vague hope. You need one number. Take the amount you can save or invest each month. Run it through 10 years. Then 20, then 30. Use conservative assumptions. Include risk. Respect fees. Respect inflation. Do not lie to yourself with fantasy returns. The goal is not to become delusional. The goal is to become dangerous to your old life. Because once you see the number, you stop negotiating with fog. You know what delay costs. You know what consistency builds. You know what debt steals. You know what must be protected. That number becomes an order. And a man with an order is harder to distract than a man with a wish. This is why calculation is more powerful than motivation. Motivation gives you emotion. Calculation gives you consequence. Motivation says you should change. Calculation shows what happens if you do not. Motivation fades when you are tired. Calculation remains cold when your feelings start negotiating. A man who calculates no longer has the luxury of vague excuses. He can no longer say he did not know. He can no longer pretend that waiting one more year is harmless. He can no longer hide behind the idea that small amounts do not matter. He can no longer call discipline pointless because the early number looks weak. He has seen the law. Now he must decide whether he will obey it or be punished by it. This is where compound interest becomes more than finance. It becomes a mirror. It shows whether you can protect something before it validates you. It shows whether you can believe in a system while the result is still quiet. It shows whether you can act without applause. It shows whether you can build evidence before anyone respects the evidence. It shows whether you are serious about freedom or only addicted to the language of freedom. Many men do not actually want freedom. They want the feeling of being a man who talks about freedom. Real freedom is colder. Real freedom asks you to retain money when nobody sees it, to invest when the number is unimpressive, to reject purchases that would make you look stronger while making your future weaker, to study boring terms, to understand taxes, fees, inflation, interest rates, risk, time horizon, and behavior. To admit that the world does not care how badly you want out if your system keeps feeding the cage. That admission is not comfortable, but it is clean. Because once the illusion dies, strategy can begin. So what is compound interest? Compound interest is the law where money earns money, and then the earned money earns more. But for the man building himself without support, it is more than that. It is the financial form of self-command. It is proof that small, disciplined actions protected from interruption can become larger than the man who began them. It is how $1,000 becomes more than $1,000. It is how private discipline becomes public proof. It is how a man stops begging the world to believe in his potential and starts building evidence too large to ignore. You are not behind because you started small. You are behind only if you refuse to start consciously. The man who starts small but stays consistent is not weak. He is laying foundations. The man who earns more but retains nothing is not powerful. He is expensive survival. The man who calculates is no longer guessing. He is commanding. The man who understands compounding no longer sees time as empty space. He sees it as territory. And territory must be occupied before another force occupies it for you. If you leave your future unoccupied, debt will occupy it. Impulse will occupy it. Inflation will occupy it. Emergencies will occupy it. Other people's demands will occupy it. The job you hate will occupy it. The family expectations you resent will occupy it. The social pressure you pretend not to care about will occupy it. Something will use your time. The only question is whether it will be your discipline or your weakness. That is the final lesson. Time is not waiting for you to feel ready. The curve is not waiting for you to feel confident. Money is not waiting for you to feel understood. The world is not waiting for you to explain your potential. You have to create evidence before the verdict changes. And compound interest is one of the simplest ways to begin, not because it makes you rich overnight, because it trains the correct identity. A man who compounds learns to respect small beginnings. He learns to delay status. He learns to protect future force. He learns to think in systems instead of moods. He learns that freedom is not claimed with words. It is built through repeated decisions that survive the month. So here is your command. Calculate one future number today. Take your current monthly saving and project it 10 years forward. Not because the number is guaranteed, but because a man who refuses to calculate is choosing blindness. Face the number, adjust the behavior, and protect the system long enough for time to reveal what discipline was building in silence. Because the old version of you wants comfort. The strategic version wants proof. And proof belongs to the man who stops restarting.